All right, this is a real quick walkthrough on how we can summarize categorical variables. So I'm going to use our S&P 500 data. I'm going to download this off of our Moodle page. And just open up that file. All right, and now we see we've got our data. We've got the first column is our elements, so it's essentially telling us which companies are in our sample that we have. Then we have two variables. We have industry, which is a categorical variable. Notice how it's just essentially describing what category the industry falls in for each company. And then we have one quantitative variable, market cap. And then over here you can see these are the unique categories we have for industry. In class we did work through something, but I'm going to teach you kind of a neater, quicker way to do this, and this is just the same kind of idea. Okay, so what I want to do first is I want to get some idea of how our industries are distributed. So if there's like some industries that are more likely to show up in our sample than others. So to do that, I'm going to use a special tool called a pivot table. So I'm going to come up to our ribbon and click Insert, and then look for the pivot table option at the left. Okay, and click that. And notice that Excel kind of guesses. It says it did a really good job. This is the data that we want, but we have to tell it, like select the table or range of data. If it didn't have the right, this is correct, but you can always delete it if you want to. And you can click the button and then just select the data yourself. Okay. All right. Now we have our data just telling us it's on sheet SP500. It starts in the top left, A1, and it goes down to column C, row 51, which is exactly what we're looking for. I like to use a new worksheet, just gives us something clean to work with, but you could also put it in this worksheet if you wanted to as well. Either way is okay. I'm going to click OK. All right, and now this is kind of the neat part of we get to pick like what variables we're looking for. Specifically, I'm going to analyze the industry, so I can do this a couple ways. I can check the industry box, okay, and notice when I do that, this populates our rows down here, so it's just going to break our data into these categories. If you can uncheck it, it just restores our table that we have, or I can drag this down here too. Okay, so either way, a bunch of different ways to do this. Okay, now once I have that, I need to populate my table. So to populate it, I need to drag industry. I'm going to use the same variable in this case. I'm dragging it down to the values box down here. Okay, all right, and there we go. This is essentially what we want to do with our categorical variable. We're trying to find the frequency, the number of occurrences in each of these categories that we have here. All right, now one thing we did in class 2 is we said we might want to know, the percentages if we're not, close on the counts. So we can always make some adjustments in here too. There's several options here if you're down in the values. So you can click on this and check out the value field settings. This is telling us what mathematical operation, so count is the correct one here. We just want to count over the number of cases, so we're okay. We can show the values as too. We can change this. Currently it's just raw counts. We can change this to percent of grand total. If we do that, click OK, and we've got percentages. And you can go back and forth too. We can get rid of that. Just going back to no calculation. Okay. All right, then we can also, let's see, you can change this a lot of different ways. You can also, if you're inside here, right click. You're going to do show values as percent of grand total, and that changes it too. And all these settings up here to give you options on how to do it. So there's many different ways to kind of go about that. Also, if you ever click outside, you deactivated the table, so now you just have the table on its own. If you ever click inside the table, the field options show up again. Okay. All right, next, we might want to add a chart. And so if we wanted to do that, you're just going to go back to Insert again. And this is our pivot chart right here. So the pivot chart it knows kind of what to do. You're going to select it. The guess that they give us is exactly right. And this is our chart, our bar plot specifically. So we'll change the title here. I'm going to call this a bar plot for industry. And I think it's important, and we'll kind of talk about this, we're going to add the axis titles. I think it's really good that we get these labeled here. So axis titles, we'll put those in. Our x-axis is the industry, And our y-axis, we can say in this case a percentage or frequency. If we do the raw counts, we can do that. Okay, all right, there you go. And that's all we're gonna play around with. So the pivot table is really nice. This is essentially what we went through. We did a couple other examples, but we used a slightly different way. This is a really good approach. You can practice this with that S&P 500.